everyone, Julian here. We've got the absolute pleasure to have Michael Lauria. We will be talking about his new book coming out, Forging Excalibur, which I think is an incredible name. We're going to be talking about a lot of masculinity. We're just going to let it fly today. No real set outcome, but really what we want to run through as an overview is just the differences between the different energies and where we personally see, because we're very much aligned to where we see the differences between the masculinity and the femininity and how they play out in relationships in business and in your own life as a man. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Julian. It's my pleasure.
No worries. So let's kick it off. What's the outcome for the book? What is the outcome? Explain obviously I've seen it all over everywhere, which is incredible. I can't wait to read it myself. I don't read many books, but I've got a feeling this one's going to be a good one for me, definitely. Give us an outline of what the book's all about.
Yeah, cool. So the book is all about helping men to embody and integrate the masculine within them at a very, very high level. That's essentially, if I were to break it all down into one little sentence, that would be it. But it encompasses so much more than that. So a lot of the book it takes people on a journey, like it takes men on a journey. It's called Forging Excalibur because, as we know, Excalibur is King Arthur's sword, and it's a very masculine symbol of strength in itself. And so what this is about, it's about taking men on a journey of something very similar to the forging process of a sword, where a man goes from a young sort of adolescent into young adulthood, through teenagehood as well, and then embodying who they're going to be as a man, and then also integrating that masculinity within them too, to create a fully embodied man who's embodied their masculinity at such a high level that in every aspect of life, it's just working for him.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest argument right now, or the biggest, catch-22 right now is I see there's a lot of men out there that actually don't have much masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not so much if you get told, if you hear your masculinity is too high, you get called a bigot, you get called this, that, the other. But then, to me, the energies are very, very different. But most uneducated people don't actually understand the differences between the energies and how they play out within yourself. So, can you explain? I guess we could be talking about that for hours. Really,
we could. Yeah, we definitely could.
You do a 4-day workshop on that, but
easy. But look, that's where we see a lot of this toxic masculinity that we see in media these days, where, and look, there's a big difference between, there's a big difference between an unembodied man and an embodied man, okay? And what we see in society, what we have seen in society, and I've really observed this over the last, especially over the last 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years, and I've been doing this for about 15 years. And I've observed men really stepping into their feminine a lot more because they've heard that women want them to be a lot more compassionate, a lot more empathetic, a lot more verbal, express their feelings a little bit more, etc., etc. And so what we've found is that men have respected that, and we've gone, okay, cool, well, I'm happy to do that, and I'll do that for you. And then what's happened is that women have stepped up into their masculine because the man has stepped back into his feminine too much. Yeah. He's now become undesirable and unattractive as a result of that.
Yeah,
pardon?
When you take the masculinity away from a man, that leadership and the sort of position in the house, and it's not a hierarchy, but a man needs to feel like, a woman needs to be the queen and the man is a king. And it's not it's not gender based really, but really it kind of is. Even in homosexual relationships, there is a masculine man and there is a masculine female, more feminine male, right? So, but if your energies cross over and what I find is if no one knows the roles in the house, that's not taking it the rubbish or anything like that, but it's just that leadership role or that nurturing role. If you take that away, then the relationship doesn't have roles, right?
Yeah, well, look, it's when it's unbalanced. So when we have a look at, and I think it's okay for us just to concentrate on the predominant relationship that we see in society, which is the heterosexual one.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different genders and these days that it can get very, very messy in terms of when we're talking about this. So if we just concentrate on the heterosexual relationship and we focus on when a man and a woman are attracted to each other at the very beginning when they first meet each other. And they're attracted, so the man is attracted to the femininity within a woman, and the woman is attracted to the masculinity within a man.
Yeah.
You'd find it very hard pressed, right, to find a woman who would be attracted to a feminine man.
That's right. And that's not anything less than biological, right? Because it goes back millennia. If you're going to procreate, you need to find the best seed for the egg, right?
Well, it goes back. It goes all the way back. We can go all the way back even to caveman days.
Yeah.
And there were very, very defined roles within relationships. There were very, very defined roles within the tribe, for instance, in regards to, and that worked with people's strengths. So men have certain strengths, women have certain strengths, and when we start to mess with that energy, that's when things get skewed.
Yeah.
And this is what we're seeing in society these days, because we're finding a lot of men are stepping into roles that they're not designed to do from an innate nature, and women are stepping into roles that they're not designed to do. Yeah. And what we're missing is the strengths that each, we'll call them genders for the sake of the discussion. Yeah. We're actually not focused on the strengths that each have. You talked about the king and the queen before. And I use this analogy quite a bit in all the interviews that I do, and I even do it in the book. When we talk about the king and the queen, so the king sits on his throne, and we'll go back to medieval days, because that's where forging Excalibur is kind of set as well, right? So the king sat there, and the king listened to all the villagers that came and asked him for his advice and passed laws and collected taxes, whatever it is that the king did sitting up on his throne. And then all the villagers would go home at the end of the day, and the king and the queen would go back into their chamber. And I guarantee you that the king's not in charge there. The queen will be very happy to tell him what he did wrong, the mistakes he made, where he could have done better. And then it's up to him to take that on board or not, if he chooses to. Yeah. And what a lot of women don't understand is that there's so much power in the feminine.
That's right.
And there's so much power in the masculine in really good ways. And if we learn to embody this within ourselves as people, then we can create healthy individuals and healthy relationships as well.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And there is that defining balance is probably the best word of that, relationship within the relationship and that connection. One of the things that I see a lot of, and even playing out in your own relationships, and obviously no one's perfect when everyone's trying their best, but it's the ability to, and you're right, at work is one aspect of the masculine, and then when they come home, it's very, very different. I definitely don't, I've got a wife and 3 kids. I definitely don't run my house, that's for sure. If you look at my house, there's not much masculinity around. There is not much left. My garage is about it. That I'm holding on to my garage, and that outside of that, it doesn't look very masculine. It's not a kingdom that I like to rule over, let's say. But it's not about, and this is where I see.
Having said that, Julian, if somebody needs protecting, who's the one that steps up and does that?
Well, yeah, I say to my wife, you go down first and see what's going on, and then nudge.
And I'll run off and make a phone call and get some help.
Just make sure you tell me, is it okay? So you're right, and this is where the argument or the lack of education or too much opinion comes into this sort of conversation, where we're not identifying each other's strengths. All we're doing is just that is there and this is that and why are you like this. But if you actually allow the strengths to come through and there's some things that, females do that are there are a lot of things actually that are so much better than a guy could ever do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Yeah.
Definitely, my wife looks after the kids, and that's not her role, let's say. But she is much, much more patient, much, much more nurturing, much, much more tolerant than I could ever be. She's like, that's just not me. I find it very, very difficult to deal with those situations. And yet in other situations is where I thrive, under pressure, stressful, those sort of situations I thrive, whereas sometimes it's a little bit different. And if we start pinpointing the weaknesses in each other, or I wish you were like this, or I wish you were more like, that's where I think it starts to disintegrate between.
Totally. And this is where the whole equality argument, this is the joys of working at home from home, I've
just started literally in the last month, and I don't know how anyone does it long term. It's just too much for me anyway.
You've got to have a bit of a strategy, a bit of a plan, and very structured.
Yeah, we bought the house was fine, but now there's 3, so we ran.
Oh wow, okay, challenging, hey.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where I was going with that next part was about equality. So we're seeing a lot of talk around equality, and we're seeing it a lot. Like it's just everywhere now. Mm-hmm. Women want equality everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's no issue with equality, no issue. And there's a very fine definition. There's a fine distinction here, I should say, because equality is a very broad term because we're actually not equal. Men are not equal to women. Women are not equal to men. We've just discussed this. We've got different strengths, different attributes, different skills, and they're all very complementary. Yeah. So when we try to be equal...
That's one thing that people forget. They're actually complementary. They work together. Right?
Well, you look at the massive civilizations that humanity has built in the past. Yeah. The Mayans, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire. I can just go on and on and on, right? This is before all this crap that we have in society now happened. And look at those. They were massive, powerful civilizations, right? And that was when we understood where each other's strengths were, and we worked with them, and we allowed each other to complement. Exactly, and this is when empires get built.
Yeah. Well, the counter to that will be someone will say, "Yeah, but back then we had all these problems." We have.
What problems did we have? What problems do we have that are worse than now?
Exactly. So we had this, and women weren't this, blah blah. We still have problems now. We still have domestic violence. So nothing has really changed. Yeah. Just different problems. And if anything, it's bringing up more problems than probably what needed to be done. When I was just in Taiwan in October, and this exact argument is one of the dumbest arguments they can ever surmise. Like, it's just, when China takes over Australia, they're going to think obviously when they keep buying us outright, they're going to be like, we don't have to worry about them fighting us because they're
fighting amongst themselves.
You know what I mean? It's open, so it's actually a ridiculous argument. I know people feel very, very strongly with yes, and I'm sure there's going to be some conversations post this. But if people actually thought about the actualization of what's happening and the ramifications of the continuation of this argument, it's just quite silly.
But here's the thing as well, Julian, and that is that we as men have to take a little bit of responsibility here as well. Insofar, we talked about emasculation before, insofar as the fact that we allowed this to happen too. Yeah. So as a gender, men have to take responsibility for their own emasculation. Yeah. Not that the responsibility isn't also on women. It's really a joint thing, but we've got to take responsibility for the fact that we've allowed ourselves to get to this point. Correct. Yeah. When we allow ourselves to get to this point from a totally disempowered place, I wonder what are women meant to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's got to step up, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Someone's got to step up into the doing, and if we're not doing it, then our wives, our partners, they have to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because someone's got to do it. Someone's got to raise the kids. Someone's got to do the shopping. Someone's got to get things done, pay the bills, manage finances. Like, if we're not doing it, who's going to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And they're not inherently masculine traits or traits just for women, just for men. But if we allow ourselves to be emasculated, then we've got to take responsibility for some of the consequences of that, which are then women feel the need to then step up and take charge, take the lead. That's very cute. Take the lead as well. And then it's up to us after that to go, well, hang on a second, we're supposed to be doing that. And then they say to us, well, you haven't been, but that's because, but you still haven't been.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, cool. Give me an opportunity to step up.
Yeah, cause and effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so leading into business, obviously that's sort of both your and I main forte, obviously your relationship coach for the last 15 years. But how does that fit into business? Because the business landscape is very much changing. The political landscape is very much changing. Even in regards to media, politics, all that sort of thing, where the equality is a number based as opposed to skill based. That's where I kind of draw. That to me is not helping.
Yeah, I think when we start to put quotas on male to female ratio in workplaces and in corporate environments, I think that's where it gets very dangerous, because you're employing people based on their sex, based on their gender, I should say, as opposed to their merits and their competencies, I should say. Speaking of competency, I can't even talk at the moment. So
you wouldn't believe that we both speak on stages and all those things, would you?
You wouldn't believe that, no. And so this is quite a dangerous thing, because when we talk about equality, we're talking about, and you and I both follow Jordan Peterson, right? Yeah. So Jordan Peterson also forms the distinction, and he does it quite forcefully, between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. Yeah. So our society is focused on equality of outcome.
Yeah.
And the outcome being whatever quota we decide is good in male to female, quotas within ratios within the workplace.
Yeah.
Whereas what we actually want to be doing is we want to be focused on equality of opportunity. And that is that everyone has the equal opportunity to get to wherever it is that they want to do. And he also makes a good point. What a lot of these feminists are doing, the real full-on feminists as well, is they're talking about, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, you should be able to have the same equality, right? But they're talking about the outcome, not the opportunity. And when they talk about the opportunity, they're talking about the outcome of women having a higher ratio of women to men than what there currently is in very powerful positions. They're talking about politicians, they're talking about judges and magistrates and CEOs, managing directors, etc., etc. What they're not talking about is they're talking about who mans the oil rigs, who are the bricklayers, who are the people on the front lines of the army. Right? We're not talking about equality of outcome in those particular positions, are we? We're only talking about them in high-level, powerful positions. And so if we're going to talk about equality, we have to talk about equality of opportunity, and that's across the board, from bricklayers, nothing wrong with bricklayers, right, from bricklayers all the way up to CEOs and judges and,
and I have, and this is where, people start to, lucky there's not a non-like button on anything, but this is where people start to get angry, right, about this conversation. And I'm sure you're the same as me. I don't have a problem with a gender. I don't care who the gender is.
Neither do I.
It's not. This is not the conversation we're talking about. But when you have, I heard the other day something about in the police force or something. Anyway, we need another 5 people, another 5 females in that role.
Yeah, just any females will do.
That doesn't make any sense. Like,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. I just don't understand where these people are coming from, and if they're not already moving, or you just get a promotion. And is that really equality? Is it if you get a promotion based on your gender, we kind of go the opposite way of where we're supposed to be going, isn't that?
We do, because then we'll have women doing the same job as men who are less qualified, getting paid the same just because they're women.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. And then what we're going to see is a flow-on effect of that is we're going to see morale in workplaces eroding beyond belief. Men are going to resign, and then they're going to replace them with women. And then we're going to have all of these women in these workforces. And again, I don't have a problem with women in the workforce. I don't have a problem with women doing the same job as men and getting paid. I don't have a problem with any of that. But if we're employing based on gender, that's where I have a problem. We have to employ and we have to fill these roles based on competence.
Yeah.
And
it's
not
almost,
on gender.
and we've got to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, right? Because it's like when you hear, the road toll is up from 10 years ago. But it's the death toll. I understand that's bad, right? And we'd like to reduce it down to zero. But there's more cars on the road. So we're not comparing the same thing.
That's right.
To me, that's exactly the same. We're not comparing. It's like, oh yeah, but we're at a disadvantage because our filter's less. But if you don't work for 30 years, like, I just don't understand how that's not part of the equation, right? If you haven't worked, if you brought up kids and, my hats off to the women out there that are mums. Like, that is a job that they reckon it's the best job in the world. I reckon it's not.
I have a ridiculous amount of respect for women who bring up kids because I tried it once and it's... I'm just kidding. I looked after my daughter. My daughter and I spent the day together. She's 2.
Yeah.
When was this? About a week ago.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, when my wife got home, I was just
done.
I was done. Yep. Yeah, I had nothing else in the tank.
Exactly. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's not equal, right? Because I look after the kids, and it seems, I know when you guys say that, oh, they're your kids, I get that, but it's kind of my role within our house, and it comes from Europe. We're both European, so we have very distinct roles, and that to me is not part of my role, right? Same as her going to work. I'm grateful that we can provide a good lifestyle so she doesn't have to work, so she can bring up the kids. So she can still get a wage, and she has for the last 3 years got a very, very good wage to look after the kids. So that's what I've been able to do. But it's not in my nature to, like, I don't know if you can hear that, but there's one crying right now. It's not in my nature to be very calming and nurturing and kind and like, or play with the painting and daddy to just, like, it just feels odd to me. Right.
And look, I was just talking about before, we all have our different strengths all.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really important that if you've got 2 people that have come together to create a life together and you've chosen to have children, then you have to have very well-defined roles at the beginning, right? Because you're bringing children to the world as a responsibility. You've got to make sure that works. Otherwise, there's broken families and then children suffer.
Yeah.
And so there's no point getting into a relationship and having kids if you're then going to argue about who's going to do what, and both of you are trying to be equal to each other in different areas, because then the castle comes falling down around you.
Yeah. And this is probably where the ultimate of where I see the failure, right? If the other partner is trying to have the power on top of the other person.
Yep.
It's all
we should be like that.
It should be not 50-50, 100-100, right?
Yeah, 100-100.
Yeah.
100-100. This is my 100% responsibility. This is my role within our relationship. I'll take 100% responsibility of this part of our life.
Yeah.
This is your role, and you take 100% responsibility for this part of our life. And then when both a part of our lives are taken care of, and we're both taking 100% responsibility, everything works.
Exactly.
Yep. And then we can both be happy, and we can both feel fulfilled, and we both know that we're contributing on different levels and in different ways, and it works.
And equally as important as each other.
Most definitely. Yeah. Most definitely. In fact, I believe it's more important to have a healthy person, a healthy, well-embodied person raising well-balanced children, than what it is for you and I to be entrepreneurs and successful business people.
Definitely, especially in today's world, because it is very different to even 10 years ago for me. We're in that Zennial period where, like, 77 to 85, they created a new generation.
Yeah.
where it's very, very different. You know, kids are on phones and they got Facebook and Instagram and there's so much pressure. I feel it myself. I'm a 36-year-old guy with married and 3 kids, and I feel that pressure, let alone, you know, a 16-year-old or going through those, you know, puberty and trying to impress people. And then you go from when you finish school to about 21 and you have no idea who you are and you think you know everything and you really don't know anyone, right? Or don't know anything. So
I knew everything at 21.
19, I knew everything. 21, I realised I knew nothing. Now I'm 36, I realise I still know nothing. I know even less now. But 19 and 21, I knew everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's a funny age, isn't it? And I've got a teenage-aged girl, daughter, and a 22-year-old son as well from previous relationship. Yeah. And so I've seen this happen, and I've seen the change, the difference just with my 22-year-old and then my 17-year-old daughter. Yeah. I've actually seen a difference just between them in terms of devices and where their focus is. Yeah. So my daughter is always on a device. Yeah. Always. Yeah. And if it's not in front of her face, it's in her back pocket. And if it's not there, it's in her hand, right, waiting for a notification. And my son's like that too, but when he was 16 or 17, very different.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's extremely. The crazy thing, I did a conversation at a gym down the road from where I go, and talking about distractions and if you're going to play full on, right, or full out, have a look at your phone, and your screen time will actually tell you where you go the most, your percentages, and literally how many times you pick up your phone is on your screenshot. So, you know, I think mine was like 196 times a day on average. So that's a lot.
It is a lot. I just downloaded an app actually, which I'm going to test out over the next couple of days. And what it does is it actually locks Facebook and Messenger for certain periods of time during the day. Yeah. And then when you try to open the app unconsciously, which I will do, I know, it'll actually give me a message, and I can customize the message. Yeah. So one of my friends has got on her phone, she says, on hers, it says, instead of doing this, go and meditate, close your eyes and breathe.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
Yeah. That's good. And so I think it's about bringing some consciousness,
that's right,
conscious awareness to a lot of the stuff that we do unconsciously much of the day.
Yeah. I was listening to something the other day. Jim Quick was talking about habits, or he was talking a conversation on one of his podcasts was about habits and how we create habits, and literally a whole brain is trying to create habits. Like when you walk into a dark room, the trigger is that it's dark, then you need a response, then you need the reaction, then you need the result, right? So so many triggers that we have when we get up in the morning, we don't think about brushing our teeth. We're brushing our teeth, then we get in the shower, whatever your formula is. If you think the way you dry yourself, you don't dry yourself different every day. It will be the exact same way. So these habits get reinforced to take more of the pressure off, but we're just literally full of habits.
Yeah.
Over and over, and just habit. You know, get home, pull in the driveway, get our beer out of the fridge, complete habit, right? Or have, you know, whatever that habit is, good or bad. You wake up in the morning, have a cigarette. I don't smoke. I'm sure you don't either.
No.
But yeah, these are all habits. So if we can actually start to be more conscious of those habits, then we have a chance of actually breaking those habits. It's not necessarily 21 days to break a habit. And I've done a lot of change work with different mentors, and what I do find is that when I start to do more change work, it actually pisses me off for the next month, because it's actually, I'm doing it more.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of it. So yeah.
And the interesting part about what you said, I became aware of that particular thing about, you know, we do things the same way all the time from a habitual perspective. And so I learned about this a few years ago, and I started doing something differently. So I was very conscious of how I get up out of bed, right? And how I wash myself in the shower, and how I dry myself, and then how I put my clothes on. And I was making a conscious effort for a few days there at one point to actually do all of this differently. And it just disrupted my whole psyche at the time, right? Wow. And when you start to do that consciously, you actually start to find that you create different synapses within your brain. Yeah. And when you do that, you create different experiences. And so when you, even as simple as washing yourself differently in the shower, and then drying yourself differently when you come out creates new synapses in your brain, a new experience, and creates new cells of recognition for that particular experience. So then when you go to the next stage of your getting ready for the day, you will be more conscious of doing that differently as well. And then when you get to the office or you get to your workplace or whatever, you're in that frame of mind where you've already been disrupted and you've done it consciously. So then when you sit down and you start working, or you do whatever you do working, you're in that disrupted state in a good way. And then you actually get a lot more resourceful and creative with your business, and you start creating better results.
Instead of just being Groundhog Day,
Exactly. And I tried this. I actually did this for about, I did it for about a week, I think, at the time. And my life transformed just in a week, just because I was more conscious of what I was doing, and then consciously changing my habitual behaviours. And then every now and then when I feel myself getting into a bit of a lull or feeling a bit stagnant, I start that process again and I do it again.
That's cool.
And the results are awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess it stands to reason how when you get, essentially putting yourself out of your comfort zone, the cold showers and stuff like that, that has a place, and meditation and everything new is always, we're always scared of something new, right? Because it always feels
it goes against the program.
Of course. And essentially our crocodile brain or a reptilian brain is literally just trying to keep us safe and procreate. That's literally what it's designed to do. So any sort of success that we're going for is already has to be outside our comfort zone, or else there's no chance of hitting it, right? So,
And it's interesting because we have to actually become a very different person to achieve the things that we're not currently achieving.
Yeah.
And so that involves disruption.
Yeah.
So I love that word disruption, right? Because you have to disrupt something in order to change it.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
And you have to disrupt. You have to create that disruption within yourself if you want to create different results.
It has to come from you rather than an external force.
Always.
Whatever.
Always.
So, yeah. Cool.
Always.
So, let's say we'll wrap up now, because I know you're really busy and I do appreciate the time. If you're a guy, because this is designed for guys, because that's your main focus, and that's what I strongly feel about, only because there's so much on the feminine side, but no one's supporting the guys anymore.
Yeah.
The highest suicide rate in between the biggest death toll is suicide between 25 and 45, whatever, which
and 78% of all suicides completed are men.
Yeah, that's
78%.
That's great. I literally, one of my dear friends and mentors, Mahir, passed away last year, and I was actually at his funeral. And that night, the night of his funeral, my old training partner that I used to do a lot of cycling with back on the Gold Coast, his brother took his own life 6 months prior, and he did it that night. I was like, and he was, racing Tour de France. I've probably ridden about 100,000 kilometers with him myself. Absolutely shocking. So it happens all the time.
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, man.
The mining industry, all these kids are left, we have a lot to not necessarily answer for, I don't think, but definitely have a lot to work towards, and a lot of hurting people out there. So let's say if you're in that situation, actually another tragic story, I had a guy working with me, and his brother has 2 kids, 7 and 4, and his wife his wife died of cancer about 12 months before, and then about 12 months after he took his own life, but he had a 7 and a 4-year-old. So the 7 and 4-year-old lost their mum to cancer, and then he took his own life. To me, it must be pretty bad to be in that situation, but being a father myself, to me, that is actually unacceptable that you would be in that situation, that you can't push yourself further. That's my understanding. Obviously, it's not
it's
just
difficult. It's difficult to judge, isn't it?
And that's no judgment. It's just like you have to find a way somehow to not be in that situation, or to be tempted. But as bad as situations have with a family and with kids, as a man, to me, that is unacceptable that you go down that path. But I understand it happens a lot, and it's not, and again, no judgment, but you need to find the resources to get yourself out of that situation, because they rely on you more than you, if that makes sense.
Totally agree, Julian. I totally agree. And what I've learned over my 15 years of counselling and coaching and mentoring is that everybody internalises their own pain in very, very different ways.
Yeah.
And how you and I will internalise our pain and how we will heal from that will be and may be very different from how many other people do.
Mm.
And I've been in those deep, dark...
Absolutely.
I've been in that abyss.
Yep. Exactly
that abyss. The only difference between me and that guy that you just talked about is that obviously I didn't go through with anything, but I was close. And I had 2 young kids at the time too. And I look back at the person that I was when I was in that place, and I don't recognise him anymore.
Of course.
But I can still... There's a little tiny part of me that can relate because it used to be me. Mm. And so I can see how when you're in that place, one little thing could tip you over the edge.
Oh, absolutely.
And perhaps I was fortunate not to have that one little thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You know, I've not been in that deeper place, but it's definitely been in some dark places. There's been a few years of business that have been pretty horrible. To be honest, 2018 wasn't my best year ever. that was a pretty dark year all up, in comparison to the other ones that were pretty golden years. But you're right. You know, if it had been worse, or had it been a different thought process, or lack of education around that situation, or I haven't built myself personally, professionally, whatever around pre that, then yeah, I definitely can understand how it would happen. I still don't agree because I think it's not fair on anyone else. So I think
we can't condone it. We don't have to condone it, but we can I certainly have a lot of compassion because when you're in a place where you truly, genuinely and authentically believe that your children may just be better off without you.
It must be horrible for a father.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely makes your eyes well up, actually, even thinking about that, you know?
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, mate, I was there, so I can speak from experience.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. You know, as soon as I'm not one to get upset, but when you talk about kids, then it's a different story, you know?
Oh, me too, man. Me too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Star is Born was oh man, that was bad.
Oh, please. 3 times. I think we messaged each other the other day about that. 3 times I cried in that bloody movie.
Yeah, I think 3 or 4. Was like, and it wasn't just like a tear; it was like just streaming.
Yeah, streaming down your face.
Yeah. So let's wrap up. Obviously, we've touched on a lot of things, and I think they're really important especially for guys here in today's modern world, and the what feels like a lack of support. But I do definitely feel like there's a movement coming. I definitely feel like there's some momentum moving towards that to support us on the other side, because it's been so this way. It does need to come back, but it comes from us, you know, and even like the Man Space, your group on Facebook's been amazing. Met up with some guys on there that and it's hard for guys, you know. I definitely find it would be much more difficult for guys 30 plus to make friends. You know, even if we had met at a bar or party or with, you know, partners and stuff, it's very unlikely that I'll go, hey, Michael, you know, I met you the other day, you know, your wife's friends with my wife. Do you want to go for a coffee? It's so unnatural to have that conversation.
But having said that, Julian, if I had met a good-looking guy like you in a bar, I might have just come up and offered to buy you a drink.
I don't know where to go with that one. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Always.
Man love. But I definitely think it's definitely moving. You know, I reached out to a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, Daniel Tropiano, and we met. And we you know, tried to meet up a couple of times. And when you do sort of force yourself out of that social conformity and what's normal, let's say, and what feels natural to call another guy, it just doesn't feel natural to do that. But when you do that, you're like, it's amazing the results you get out of it, and it's amazing the friendships you can actually create very, very quickly. Seeing that
totally,
all of us humans are looking for the same thing. That's where we're sort of moving towards. You really, every human, we're so connected in so many different ways, and yet the connection of each other is very much not there.
You must have just read my mind. I was just about to say that. I was going to say that as human beings, our highest level of the highest level that we want to actually experience is connection. with other human beings and other people that we can relate to as well. So as guys, we can relate better to guys. And so we want to actually connect with other guys and be able to relate to them and catch up with them and have a coffee or lunch or whatever and just share experiences.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like, I think that's really quite an empowered thing to do for men.
Yeah, 100%. And once you get past that, this is a bit strange or a bit weird, or there's, social convention or whatever culturally is been running in generations, because guys don't talk about their feelings. That's literally been generations old, right? It's just not what we do. We don't go to the pub and go, "Oh, Marco, how you feeling?" Actually pretty shit, because it's just not a conversation. But I definitely think it's becoming more normal.
It is becoming more normal, and it's great to see.
Exactly. There's a lot of people hurting out there. I think there's a lot of people that need a lot of support, have no idea where to look, and we are not the sort of resourceful people outside for gender that's going to look for feelings, because it's just not normal. It's considered weak, or it's considered soft, or it's considered whatever else. Our culture has been, pressured, put us under a pressure cooker. But I definitely think that openness is definitely coming through, and your group's been amazing to sort of get that man love out. And it actually is kind of like, it's okay to be like that, Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you got lots of value out of it. That's good.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, mate. I actually caught up with a good mate of mine, or my best man at the wedding, and we caught up, gave a big hug, because that's what we do. And I haven't seen him for probably a couple of months. And the waitress actually saw us. She was parking a car or something across the road, and she goes, "Oh, is this like a reunion?" And I said, no, we just, she goes, "How long since you've seen each other?" I said, "Oh, probably about 2 months." So she said, "That is so nice to see a couple of guys like hug it out," you know what I mean? So I think it's cool.
Yeah, cool, man. Awesome.
Beautiful. Parting words. Biggest tip, if you're feeling a little bit lackluster in your life, or there's no purpose, or you're feeling like whatever, what can you do? Because obviously that's a little bit of survival mentality. I know that from the values pendulum. Connection with yourself, super important. What would you do very, very quickly? 3 top tips.
3 top tips. Okay. Number 1, understand that there's a better version of you within.
Love it.
Number 2, so the first thing is understand there's a better version of you, right? I could even make that 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
I won't. That's too easy.
Yeah,
So number 1, understand there's a much better version of you within, and you just don't have access to the tools within you in order to find it and manifest it in reality. That's number 1. Number 2, find people, other men, who are not necessarily in the same situation as you, but have possibly moved a little bit beyond where you are. Lean on them for support, and you can, because we can't always see the forest for the trees, and we can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we can also always see that little bit further ahead, always. Yeah. And if you can find someone that's that little bit further ahead, it makes it much easier for you to take that next step. And then you can continue taking those steps together as you move along. Yeah. And the third thing is just get a coach or a mentor to help you through that dark place, or that place that you're in right now, just to help you sort of claw out of it or climb out of it, or, at least to help to be able to see that there's a light. Yeah.
And the dark place is nothing more. It's not like, you're standing on the edge of the cliff. That's not the dark place.
No.
Catch it way before that.
It's that place of self-doubt and feeling inadequate and a lack of confidence, not quite knowing who you are as a person. And that's a lack of identity, a lack of purpose, and all that sort of stuff, right? Not feeling fulfilled in life.
And everyone goes through it.
Everyone does. Absolutely, everyone does.
You haven't tried. And normally what I would find is, if you haven't gone through it, you're not venturing into areas that are going to test you, right?
And I'm a big believer that adversity is the precursor to growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thanks so much for your time. I know you guys got a ton of value out of it. The first person who interviewed to nearly make me cry, so that's a good start.
Success.
That's a first. There you go. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Julian.